You're standing on a street corner in a great American city on a Tuesday morning, and something is off. The coffee shop on the corner is gone. The school 2 blocks over merged with another school because there weren't enough kids to fill it. There's a moving truck parked halfway up the block, and if you'd stood on this same corner a year ago, you'd have seen one then too. Nobody's panicking. There's no siren. That's the thing about a city losing people. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as one fewer kid in a classroom, one fewer regular at the diner, one more house sitting empty with the grass getting long. And in 2026, the numbers behind that quiet are genuinely startling. The United States added about 1.8 million people between the middle of 2024 and the middle of 2025. Sounds fine until you learn that's roughly half of what the country added the year before, and that the tide that was quietly keeping dozens of big cities afloat, immigration, got cut roughly in half in a single year. And when that tide went out, it exposed something the glossy city break videos never show you: which American cities people are actually choosing and which ones they're walking away from with a lease termination in one hand and a U-Haul key in the other. Today, I'm going to walk you through 12 of them, ranked from the ones bleeding slowly to the ones in genuine free fall. And I'll tell you the honest version, because the honest version is stranger than the doom videos. Some of these cities are dying. Some are just changing hands. And one of them lost the ability to deliver drinking water to its own residents for over a month. Stay for that one, because almost nobody tells that story straight. First, let me show you what's really going on, because there's a mechanism under all of this, and once you see it, every city on this list makes sense. For years, big American cities ran on a simple equation. Every year, tens of thousands of residents would leave for the suburbs or the Sun Belt. And every year, international arrivals would quietly replace them. Domestic out, international in. The books balanced, the population lines stayed flat or ticked up, and the mayors gave optimistic speeches. Then, between 2024 and 2025, net international migration to the United States collapsed from about 2.7 million people to about 1.3 million. The replacement pipeline shut down. And suddenly, every city that was losing its own residents had nothing covering the loss. That's the real story of 2026. Not a sudden stampede for the exits, but the curtain being pulled back on an exodus that was happening the whole time. The Census Bureau's own demographers spelled it out when the new estimates dropped in January. Slowest national growth since the depths of the pandemic, and the drop-off hit the biggest cities hardest. Keep one comparison in mind with every city that follows: the postcard versus the spreadsheet. The postcard is what the city sells you: the skyline, the food scene, the weekend break montage. The spreadsheet is what the people who live there actually pay: the rent, the insurance renewal, the property tax bill, the job listings. Every city on this list has a gorgeous postcard. Every one of them is losing the spreadsheet argument. The question isn't just who's leaving, it's who was quietly covering for it, and what happens now that nobody is. Number 12, Seattle. Here's a city that looks unstoppable from the outside. Tech money, mountains on the horizon, a skyline full of cranes. But researchers at Harvard's Housing Center ran the numbers, and Seattle is one of a handful of big metros that would have lost population outright without international immigration. Read that again. One of the most celebrated economies in America can't hold on to enough of its own residents to grow on its own. The reason isn't mysterious. The median home costs more than most households earn in a decade, and the people leaving aren't the software engineers. They're the teachers, the line cooks, the young families who did the math on a 2-bedroom and gave up. And this is where the running theme of this whole list starts. So mark it. The postcard and the spreadsheet are telling two different stories. The postcard shows Pike Place and the Space Needle and a booming tech economy. The spreadsheet shows a city that only grows if enough people arrive from abroad to replace the locals heading for Spokane, Boise, and Texas. With the immigration tide cut in half nationally, Seattle's cushion is thinner than it's been in years. The city isn't collapsing. The jobs are real. The paychecks at the top are enormous. But it's now exposed, and the next few years will show whether a city can run on 6-figure salaries alone, or whether it eventually needs the people who make the 6-figure city actually function. Number 11. Boston. Same disease, older patient. Boston sits on that same list of metros that would shrink without international arrivals. And between 2024 and 2025, its population growth fell by at least 70% compared to the year before. 70% in 1 year. Boston has world-class universities, world-class hospitals, and a housing market that treats a 900-square-foot condo like a Rembrandt. The students still come, they always will, but the graduates increasingly don't stay because the gap between a starting salary and a starter home has become a canyon. Massachusetts as a whole keeps losing residents to other states year after year, mostly to New Hampshire, Florida, and the Carolinas, places where the same job comes with a yard. Here's the comparison to hold on to. Boston sells itself as the city of beginnings, the place your American story starts. Increasingly, that's exactly what it is. A beginning. 4 years of school, maybe 5 years of work, and then the U-Haul. Because Chapter 2 needs a bedroom the city can't price within reach. The city will always matter. The hospitals and universities guarantee that. But a city where the people who grew up there can't afford to raise their own kids, there is running on borrowed demographics. And in 2026, the lender got stingy. Number 10. Miami. This one surprises people because the story we've all been told is that everyone is moving to Florida. And for a decade, that was true. But look closer at 2026 and the picture flips. Miami sits on that same list of metros that would have lost population without immigration. The domestic math already turned negative. People are leaving Miami, and the reason is written on a single piece of paper that arrives once a year, the home insurance bill. The average premium in Miami-Dade County is now running around $15,000 a year. Not the mortgage, the insurance. And one major climate risk analysis projects Miami premiums rising over 300% by 2055, the steepest climb of any big metro in the country. The service workers, the retirees on fixed incomes, the families renting one-bedrooms. They're being squeezed out one renewal notice at a time. Even United Van Lines now rates Florida as balanced, inbound equal to outbound, for the first time in recent memory. The postcard still shows the beach. The spreadsheet shows the exits. Number 9. Philadelphia. Philly has been on the list of America's biggest 5-year population losers, alongside New York and San Francisco. And like Boston and Seattle, the research shows it would have shrunk outright without international arrivals propping it up. What makes Philadelphia's version of this story particular is that it was supposed to be the affordable big city, the place you moved when New York priced you out. And for a while, it was. You could get a row house for what a Brooklyn parking spot cost, and a whole generation of priced-out New Yorkers took the deal. But the city's job engine never fully matched its size. The poverty rate stayed among the highest of America's big cities and the households that anchor a neighborhood. The ones with kids, the ones who coach the Little League, the ones who notice when your porch light's been off for 3 days, kept trickling out to the suburbs and down south. Interestingly, Philadelphia showed up as a gainer on U-Haul's index in 2025, so there are signs the bleeding may be slowing. But a city that needs a moving truck index to find good news is a city that knows exactly which way the wind's been blowing. Number 8, Los Angeles. California lost more residents to other states than anywhere in America. The state runs a net domestic loss of roughly 230,000 people a year, and in the most recent count, about 77,000 of them went to Texas alone. Los Angeles is the biggest single engine of that outflow. For years, immigration covered it completely. Then California's net international arrivals dropped from about 361,000 to about 109,000 in a single year. And the state's overall population actually fell, down more than 9,000 people, the largest decline of any state. And here's the detail that tells you where this is heading. Los Angeles County just became the most expensive county in California for home insurance, averaging over $4,000 a year, after wildfires rewrote what insurers think a hillside house is worth. And that's for the homeowners lucky enough to still find a carrier, because 7 of the state's 12 major insurers have pulled back or stopped writing new policies. The people leaving LA aren't leaving the beach or the weather or the tacos. Nobody leaves the tacos willingly. They're leaving a median home price north of $900,000, a commute that eats 2 hours a day, and the slow realization that the same salary buys a whole different life in Dallas or Phoenix. The postcard still shows the palm trees at sunset. The spreadsheet shows 77,000 Californians a year choosing Texas instead. The weather is still perfect. The math no longer is. Number 7, Chicago. Chicago's decline isn't news. The city has lost population in most years for over a decade, sliding from 2.7 million a century ago to around 2.66 million now. And analysts have projected that if the trends hold, Houston overtakes it as America's 3rd largest city by around 2035. That would end a run Chicago has held since the 1890s. The usual explanations get thrown around. Taxes, crime, winters. And there's a piece of truth in each. But the deeper mechanism is the same one hollowing out the whole industrial Midwest. The jobs that built those neighborhoods left decades ago, and the neighborhoods have been slowly following them ever since. Walk the south and west sides, and you can read it in the architecture. Blocks built for the payrolls of steel mills and stockyards that closed before most of the people leaving today were born. Meanwhile, and this is the part the headlines skip, the metro area around the city has actually been inching up, which means a lot of Chicago's loss isn't people abandoning the region at all. It's families moving 20 miles to Naperville or Joliet for the schools and the property taxes, still coming downtown for the bears and the deep dish, still calling themselves Chicagoans. The city shrinks. The idea of the city doesn't. Here's the honest caveat, though. Illinois moved from being one of the top outbound states to balanced in 2025. The first time in over a decade the exodus paused. Chicago is not a dying city. It's a great city getting smaller, and those are very different things. Number 6, San Francisco, the poster child of the pandemic exodus. San Francisco's population has fallen around 6% since 2020. Among big cities, only St. Louis lost a larger share. And at one point, it wore the crown of fastest shrinking major city in America. You know the outline: remote work untethered the tech workforce, and a one-bedroom that cost $3,500 a month suddenly had to compete with the entire rest of the country, and lost badly to places with driveways. Between 2020 and 2022, the city emptied faster than any big city in modern American history, and the internet built an entire content genre out of filming its emptiest blocks. But here's what the doom loop videos won't tell you. In 2025, San Francisco flipped to a net gain market on U-Haul's index for the first time, cracking their top 25 growth metros. The city that everyone declared dead is quietly getting cheaper, relatively speaking, and some people are coming back. The exodus was real. The obituary was premature. Both things are true, and almost nobody covering this city has the patience to say both. Number 5, New York City, the big one. Between mid-2024 and mid-2025, New York City lost 1,296 residents, the largest numeric drop of any city in America. But that headline number is almost misleadingly small because it hides the real machine underneath. In 2025, the city lost a net of about 114,000 residents to other parts of the United States, up from $94,000 the year before. For years, that staggering outflow was masked by international arrivals and by births outnumbering deaths. Then immigration to the city fell by roughly 70%, and the mask came off. And here's the detail that should genuinely worry anyone who loves that city. The city's own budget watchdog found that people leaving now span every income level, every age, every background. It's not just the rich decamping to Florida or the young priced out to Jersey. It's everyone. Most don't go far. Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. They still want New York. They just want it at a distance their paycheck can survive. And the ones who leave the region entirely head where you'd guess: Florida, Texas, the Carolinas, Georgia. Here's the frame to hold on to, because New York is the purest version of the pattern on this whole list. The city's pull has never been stronger. The report that documented the exodus called it, in the same breath, a global center of opportunity. The pull isn't the problem. The price of staying is. 8.5 million people are still there. Births still outrun deaths by a wide margin. And the city has buried confident obituaries before. In the 70s, after 2001, after 2020. But when 114,000 more people walk out than walk in a single year across every tax bracket, that's not churn. That's a verdict on the rent. Number 4, Baltimore. Baltimore's numbers read like a slow-motion documentary. From nearly 1 million residents in the mid-20th century to roughly 575,000 today. About 40% of the city gone. The port jobs and the factory jobs left first. The middle class, black and white alike, followed them out to the counties. And each departure shrank the tax base that funds the schools and services that might have convinced the next family to stay. That's the spiral, and Baltimore has been living in it for 60 years. But I'll be straight with you, because the fear content machine won't be. Baltimore is genuinely improving right now. Robberies and car thefts are down, and the homicide clearance rate has climbed from around 40% to nearly 70%, which means crimes actually get solved now, which is how trust gets rebuilt. The exodus is real and long. So is the effort to turn it. Both deserve to be said out loud. Number 3, Memphis. Memphis loses about 14 residents a day. Around 5,200 people a year, steadily, quietly. At one point in the last few years, Memphis held a distinction nobody wants, the only one of America's 55 biggest metro areas to lose population. Not the city, the entire metro. And unlike the coastal cities on this list, you can't blame the housing costs because Memphis is one of the cheapest big cities in the country. You can still buy a real house there for what a New Yorker pays in 18 months of rent. That's what makes Memphis the most important case study on this list. It proves the exodus isn't only about price. The postcard here is genuinely great. Beale Street, Graceland, barbecue worth a detour of several hundred miles, and a river view that explains why the city exists at all. The spreadsheet is the problem, just a different page of it. The problem is the opposite shape. The FBI's numbers put Memphis's violent crime rate at the top of the national table, several times the national average, and the job market has never replaced what the distribution economy alone can't carry. So the families who can leave do, usually just across the county line to DeSoto County, Mississippi, or out to the suburbs, taking the tax base with them and making every city problem a little harder to fund. The city's own mayor has called the population loss a crisis, and he's studying Detroit for answers, which tells you something about how far this has gone. When Detroit is your comeback model, you're deep in the hole. But it also tells you the hole has a ladder. Number 2, New Orleans. This one hurts because there's no city in America like it, and the numbers are brutal anyway. New Orleans has lost around 22,000 people over the past 5 years. The metro area is down about 4% since 2020. Nearly a quarter of the homes in the city sit vacant, one of the highest rates in the nation. And the reason isn't that people stopped loving New Orleans. Travelers literally just voted it one of the top destinations in the country. The reason arrives in the mail. After the recent hurricanes, insurers went bankrupt or fled Louisiana, and homeowners watched premiums double, some paying $3,000 a year more, on top of flood insurance, on top of everything else. Layer that over a stagnant job market. The region's own demographers say flatly that the number one issue is jobs, not schools, not crime, jobs. And you get a city where the culture is priceless and staying is unaffordable. And the projections say this is the beginning, not the end. New Orleans premiums are forecast to roughly triple over the next 3 decades as insurers keep repricing the coast. Think about what that means. The brochure sells you the French Quarter, beignets at dawn, a brass band on Frenchmen Street. And every bit of that is real. I defend that city's soul against anyone. But the people who make it real, the cooks and musicians and second-line marchers, are the exact people an insurance renewal hits hardest. A city can keep its music and still lose the people who make it. That's what's happening, one renewal notice at a time. And number 1, Jackson, Mississippi. The catastrophic end of the scale, and I want to be careful here, because this is a story about systems failing people, not people failing. Jackson has worn the title of fastest shrinking city in America. Its population, over 200,000 in 1980, has fallen to around 145,000 and keeps dropping by thousands a year. And the reasons are the kind you'd expect in a collapsing infrastructure documentary, not a state capital. In 2022, the water system failed so completely that residents went more than a month without reliable drinking water. A boil water crisis that made national news and kept kids out of school. Then a political standoff left neighborhoods without trash pickup for over a month. Add one of the highest murder rates in the country and decades of chronic underinvestment, and every crisis makes it harder to convince anyone to stay. The real estate agents there say exactly that. And Jackson isn't alone. Mississippi has 3 cities among the 10 fastest shrinking in America: Greenville, Vicksburg, and Jackson. All of them places where poverty compounded, infrastructure crumbled, and the young left for cities that could promise them running water and a paycheck. You can't blame a single soul for leaving. That's the catastrophic part. Now here's the part that actually matters, because there's an industry built on telling you this story wrong, in 2 opposite directions. On one side, you've got the doom content economy, the channels and headlines selling you burning, lawless, abandoned American cities, because fear is the cheapest emotion to monetize, and an empty storefront filmed at the right angle is worth 1 million views. On the other side, you've got the boosters, the tourism boards, the real estate promoters, the city break influencers, selling you a skyline at golden hour, because nobody books a weekend in a city with a tax base problem. Neither side is lying with the numbers exactly. They're lying with the frame. There's no money in telling you the honest version. There's a great deal of money in selling you either the apocalypse or the brochure. And the honest version is this: almost nobody on this list is fleeing a war zone. They're fleeing a spreadsheet, a rent that ate 40, then 50% of a paycheck, an insurance renewal that doubled, a school that closed, a job market that never came back after the factory did whatever factories do. Nearly half of all American renters now spend more than 1/3 of their income just keeping a roof up. 22.7 million households. That's the engine under every city on this list. And notice who actually pays the price when a city shrinks. Not the pundits arguing about it, and not the people wealthy enough to leave easily, but the residents who stay. Fewer neighbors, thinner budgets, longer waits for everything. In cities they love and built and refuse to give up on. The people of Jackson didn't break their water system. The people of New Orleans didn't invent the insurance market. Systems failed them, and then the moving trucks got filmed like it was their verdict. And that's really the thing I want to leave you with. Bigger than any one city. A city is not its skyline, and it's not its census line either. It's an agreement, millions of people betting every single day that staying is worth it. When you understand that, the map stops being a ranking and starts being a story. Growth isn't virtue and shrinkage isn't sin. Houston isn't better than Chicago. It's just cheaper, newer, and less finished. Some of the most alive places I've ever walked have been cities on the wrong side of a population chart, because the people still there aren't tourists in their own hometown. They're the ones keeping the agreement. Seeing a place clearly, instead of through a headline, is the whole difference between understanding the country and just consuming it. So here's what I want you to take away. First, the big mechanism: American cities weren't suddenly abandoned in 2026. An immigration collapse pulled the curtain back on a domestic exodus that had been running for years, and the cities that depended on that cover got exposed all at once. Second, the sorting: the coastal giants, New York, LA, San Francisco, Boston, Seattle, Miami, are losing people to cost, and mostly to their own suburbs and the Sun Belt. The interior cities, Chicago, St. Louis's cousins, Memphis, Jackson, are losing people to a decades-old story of jobs leaving first. And the Gulf, New Orleans, Miami again, is losing people to an insurance market that's quietly repricing whole coastlines out of reach. Third, the honest asterisks. San Francisco flipped positive on the moving truck index. Illinois stopped bleeding for the first time in a decade. Baltimore is solving crimes at rates it hasn't seen in years. And Detroit, the eternal cautionary tale, is now the comeback model other cities study. Decline is real. It is also not destiny. And if you're actually thinking about where to live, ignore both the doom reels and the promo reels and ask 3 boring questions. What does insurance cost? What do the schools look like? And are there jobs that aren't listed on a tourism poster? Those 3 answers will tell you more than any ranking, including mine. A year from now, when the next round of census estimates drops and the headlines scream again, you'll read them differently. You'll see the machine underneath, and you'll know which cities are dying, which are shrinking, and which are just becoming something else. Tell me in the comments below, what's your city doing? Growing, shrinking, or pretending? I especially want to hear from people who actually live in the 12 I named today, because the view from the sidewalk beats the view from the spreadsheet every time. What did I get right? What did I miss? And what's the thing about your hometown that no census number captures? I read every single one of these, and I'll be honest, the comments from people who've actually lived these numbers are the reason this channel exists. And if this is the kind of straight version you're not getting anywhere else, subscribe, because next time I'm going the opposite direction. The American towns growing so fast, they're breaking. Places that doubled in size before anyone built a second grocery store, and one exurb outside Dallas that grew 31% in a single year. That story is stranger than this one. The moving trucks all have to go somewhere. Until then, look past the skyline, check the math. And remember that every city on every list is still somebody's whole world.